chicken that you always knew you wanted to be, or at least eat at KFC, and it rhymes because it's meant to see the B, the... Listen. Balanced Druid is a cool spec, alright, and you might have thought that maybe it could be something that you can main, maybe not, maybe you're not sure, maybe you're like, I'm never gonna main this. Well, this is still the perfect video for you, because I will be talking a little bit about what it means to main a Balanced Druid and why it is something that you should at least consider. You don't have to main it, but maybe a little bit, but you don't have to main it, but I can at least go over some of the reasons as to why I considered maining a Balanced Druid and why it is my most played alt in Dragonflight so far. Now, numbers aside, numbers are always kind of like a middle factor. It's important for your spec to do damage, especially if we're talking about a DPS, but you know, the other specs as well. And damage is there, okay? We're not gonna go into it. Balanced Druid is one of the best DPSers in the game, period. And then that's fine. However, what it means to be an actual Balanced Druid, because it's not as easy to go into considering that it is a Druid. Well, first of all, the Balanced Druid, the way you play it, you basically have astral power that you generate. That's your main resource, and spending it deals a lot of damage. Then you spend that astral power on star surges in single target and star falls in AoE. And as you might already know, Balanced Druid is a dot spec, and you have to spread your dots. The two main ones are Moonfire and Sunfire, but you do have other style of dots. You have Stellar Flare, for instance, which you can play it now all the time when you want to play Balanced Druid, or in 10.1 you're probably only going to pick it in single target, or at least that's what the devs want us to do, so they're gonna balance and tune it in a way where it's probably not ideal to take an AoE. Probably. We will see how that plays out. However, in AoE you have another dot, which is called Mushrooms, which are kind of like a dot, kind of like a bomb, kind of like both, because you put a mushroom down and it explodes on everybody and it deals damage. You can take the Fungal Growth talent that augments it even more, for that damage to also leave down a dot. And that is important because of another talent that seems to be pretty much crucial for all of the Balanced Druid gameplay so far, and that's Waning Twilight, which makes you do 8% or more if they change it, or less, but I hope not, 8% more damage to targets that have 3 dots on them, and 2 of them are obviously Moonfire, Sunfire. It used to be Stellar Flare now, but Mushrooms are also a little bit better to do that, and you have a bunch of other dots. You obviously have big cooldowns like Convoke or Celestial Alignment or Fury of Valoon or New Moon, and you can play and swap in between all of those in terms of the talent build, because there is, at least as of now, some flexibility when it comes to the builds that you can access to, which is always good to have variety in a spec that you end up playing. Obviously, Boomkin kind of suffers slightly in a single target. And I call it Boomkin, but for, you know, if you have never played it, it's basically Balanced Druid. It's a combination of Moonkin, which is basically the form that the Balanced Druid takes, and the fact that it goes boom, and it does go boom pretty consistently. Because let's talk a little bit about the consumers of your astral power, because astral power is generated by the dots and by your main generators, which I'm going to talk about as well, but the consumers are the most satisfying consumers in the game to press. The sound effect, the way that interact with your spec is very satisfying. Star Surge is a single target, very flashy, blast into your target. It does good damage, but it activates a bunch of stuff, one of which is Goldrin, the Spirit of Goldrin, which is like a little wolf that shouts and you can hear it howl in the background, because we do sound effects here at Marcelian&Flame, and then it slaps into the target and does really good damage. Also, you have a chance to spawn little Fey Dragons, which, okay, it's a little bit fairy, but that's fine because it's cool, because Fey Dragons are nuts. Check out Brightwing, I'm not gonna go into details, and they kind of blast your target with arcane or astral damage. I think it's astral damage. Not to mention that you have Fury of Valoon that shoots down a beam on the target and it just explodes. Really cool whenever you go into Eclipses and stuff. And probably the most satisfying AoE ability in the game is Starfall. And you might be thinking, Flame, you must be smoking or drunk or whatever you want to call it, basically. But hear me out. Starfall is an AoE ability that you activate, and it's an aura around you that deals damage. Now, this is good because you don't have to like place something down, you don't have to have something targeted, and you don't have to have something to cast it on. It's instant. It's the most easy to use finisher in the game because it doesn't require you to do anything except actually press it, which is very relaxing considering that the rest of the rotation is very high octane and intense. Setting up dots, keeping dots up, making sure you're into Eclipse, making sure you don't cap astral power. You just press Starfall and things just work. Starfall deals AoE uncapped damage, by the way, which is very satisfying for when you see like oh, I'm calling down the damage of the stars, to be able to hit only like 5 or 8 targets is just silly. And it's seemingly one of the only few AoE abilities that is not capped, which is really, really, really great. Use it. It is so fun. Now let's talk a little bit about Eclipses. Eclipses is how the main spec functions. You have arcane damage with stuff like Starfire and Moonfire, and you have nature damage with stuff like Wrath and Sunfire, which is all really cool. Now when they combine, they become astral damage. Astral damage is basically what your finishers do and what your mastery augments, and this is kind of tightly knit into your Eclipses. The Eclipse is basically activated by using 2 of the same generators to get a specific Eclipse. If you use 2 Wraths, you will get a Lunar Eclipse, or the opposing elements type Eclipse. And if you use 2 Starfires, you get Solar Eclipse. Solar Eclipse buffs nature damage, Lunar Eclipse buffs arcane damage. So whatever generator you use to generate your Eclipse will buff the other side of your damage profile. And obviously all of them will buff your finishers because astral damage is both. Now when you pop Celestial Alignment, you get both of the Eclipses at the same time and your damage skyrockets all over the place. And that is the cool part of it. Not to mention you have talents like Arcanic Pulsar, which makes it so that every, what is it, 600 or 900, I think it's 600 astral power that you consume, you automatically get bumped into a Celestial Alignment window of about, what is it, 6-8 seconds, something like that, where you basically have both Eclipses up at the same time, which is when you probably want to like spam all of your Starfalls or Star Surges and all of that to get into it. And the flow of this rotation is very satisfying. You get little mini windows of damage increase, which are Eclipses. Every now and again, you get a big celestial window because you spend a lot of astral power, and every 2 minutes or 3 minutes, depending if you type talent into Incarnation, which you probably should, you get a big 30-second window of just doing massive damage, which is very satisfying. Overall, the rotation of balance is super engaging. It's hard to ever get bored because there's always something to do. There's always a little oh moment. Oh, this is so cool. Oh, I'm in an Eclipse. Oh, I'm in a different Eclipse. Oh, I'm in a Celestial Alignment. Oh, I'm in an Incarnation. Oh, the beam starts to spawn. Oh, a moon crashes down on my enemies. This is probably the most impressive visually spec out there that you can do. There's always a planet smashing into the ground. There's always a star burning down your enemies. There's always little glimpses of little stars crashing into the enemies. It's really fun. And not to mention you're a druid, you have all the druidy things. You can shapeshift into different forms. You have probably way more tankiness than other specs have by shapeshifting into bear, getting a boost in HP, potential to heal and armor, and that's basically with no cooldown whatsoever. So you do have access to a very varied toolkit of utility abilities, from stuff like Ursal's Vortex to Typhoon to Solar Beam that silences enemies in an AoE, to Root, to jumps, to sprints, to all of that stuff is something that Balanced Druid can do. And if you want a caster that can do a big chunk of its rotation on the move by spreading dots and popping consumers that are basically instant cast, then Balanced Druid is for you. And if it's not, then you have to let us know what you think about Balanced Druid and why it is not your main yet, because I don't know what you're doing. And the only reason I can make this video is because Marcelian is out of the country since he's not a big KFC fan, but that's for a different occasion. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thank you, Patreons, for supporting the content that we do and making this possible. We love you guys, and if you, dear viewer, want to support us a little bit more, check the Patreon link down in the description, see what goodies are in store for you, and we would be super grateful. It does help us out to be able to make this content and do this for a living. Appreciate you guys. Thank you for watching the video. See you next time.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classical retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.